Hey everyone. I was actually having an uncharacteristically crappy morning. And then this happened. Uh this has been an extremely hard and difficult day for so many people. Frankly, I'm a little surprised, but happily uh, delighted by how many people that David Lynch and his work touched. It's hard to know the right words to say, so I'm doing my best, but I'm not perfect. No one is. Uh, but I wanted to do a show tonight because when things like this happen, for instance, when Angelo Badalamenti passed away a couple of years ago, we did a show because we wanted to talk about him and praise his work and his life. And a lot of you found that very cathartic. I believe we also did this when Peggy Lipton passed away. And again, people found that cathartic. So, this channel was never conceived to be strictly a David Lynch channel. It was always supposed to cover all types of film and filmmakers. However, when this channel first got started, I had the privilege and the honor of interviewing Jennifer Lynch. And that sent me down a rabbit hole of wanting to uh, deep dive into David Lynch's work and his life uh, in a way that I had never done publicly. The Google Analytics, of course, then said that this channel talked about David Lynch and Twin Peaks. So anytime I posted anything else that was not David Lynch and Twin Peaks, uh, this YouTube would not show it to others. So this channel basically became a David Lynch Twin Peaks channel. And then, of course, when season 3 came out, we did our discussions and watch-alongs. And so, in a way, a channel that I never expected to be about David Lynch became about David Lynch. Same thing about, I guess I could say, about my worldview when it comes to storytelling and filmmaking. I love all storytellers and filmmakers, but there was something about David Lynch that made me think, wow, you can do this too. And I've seen that all over today. So many people, whether you're a creative person or you just loved watching his films or his paintings or his comic strip or his cartoon Dumbland or whatever, um, he has inspired so many people on so many different levels that, unlike other celebrity deaths where people who have worked with an artist will say nice things about him or her, NASA today posted something about David Lynch. Like the official account, social media account for NASA posted something about David Lynch. This is huge. And so when Mark Frost writes today that there will be no one else like him on this planet, again, believe him. People said the same thing about Stanley Kubrick, and as you can see, individual artists that hold true to who they are very rare. So it's very important for us to not only acknowledge them, but to remember them. And one of the nice things about David Lynch is that he was alive to feel that appreciation. It's not like he passed away and then 20 years later, people are reappraising his work. People reappraise his work while he was still alive. So he felt very loved all the way through his life. He was able to be an artist that went into the surrealistic nature of things and bring it into, dare I say, the mainstream in a way that everybody could relate to it and everybody could feel it on a personal level. He was elderly. He, was not doing well over the last couple of years, but still holding on there. He's not alone. There are going to be other filmmakers that we love, Steven Spielberg, Martin Scorsese, Coppola, you name it, that are up there. This is going to happen over and over again. So we need to appreciate the artists while they're alive. And I guess in a way, that's why I was okay with this channel becoming a David Lynch channel, because I love the man and I love his work so much. I never got to meet him. I know people who have met him. I feel I wish I could have been one of them, but I wasn't. And in a way, I kind of had to make peace with that years ago. I was like, you know what, I don't think I'm going to meet this guy. And while it's a shame I never got to, and it's a shame that millions of us never got to, I feel like he shared through his work himself with us on such a level, such a deep level, that we are forever changed as human beings. Let me just read to you what his family wrote today. So this happened earlier this morning. I'm going to say between 10 and 10:30 Pacific time here on the West Coast of the U.S. It is with deep regret that we, his family, announce the passing of the man and the artist David Lynch. We would appreciate some privacy at this time. There's a big hole in the world now that he's no longer with us. But as he would say, keep your eye on the donut and not the hole. It's a beautiful day with golden sunshine and blue skies all the way. I heard this news from Sabrina, her Instagram post. I just thought she was posting another cool picture of David Lynch from back in the day. And then my eyes darted to what she wrote. And I was like, excuse me? I read it again. And while this may have been something we all saw coming at some point, I don't think any of us were ready to deal with it today. As I said in the video description of this of tonight's live stream, this was a live stream I knew I was going to have to do at some point, but it's a live stream you don't ever want to do. Now, that being said, we're just going to talk about David Lynch tonight. We're going to talk about everything and anything we want about him. We're going to remember him. This will not be the last video on this channel. We will continue to talk about him. However, this is a monumental shift. His work now is finite. There is an ending to his work. For a long time, we talked in between season 3 or the limited series or the return or whatever you want to call it. And today we would discuss about potential projects, or, is he filming Wisteria or Unrecorded Night, or what's going on? And then Sabrina Sutherland kindly took to the Tulpa forum and let us know what was going on. And once we knew what was going on, or once she expressed what was going on from, we kind of backed off a little bit, just because there wasn't really anything to say because she clarified everything. So we just waited for the next project or whatever it was going to be to, come upon our news feeds. Alas, today's news feed was this. And I really didn't even have any words to say about, I didn't know what to say. People are writing these beautiful messages of love and remembrance about him. And I never met him. So I was stumped for words. I could just write, David Lynch passed away. This is not a joke. And it's a hard thing. It's a hard thing to write, because, this isn't just some random artist to us, right? This is not some random filmmaker or storyteller to us. This was a guy, a lot of filmmakers, and this is, no offense to them. I love their films, but sometimes you come out and you can have a discussion about their films, and then you go about your day, and maybe you'll watch it again and talk about some more or whatever, but you'll go about your day. David Lynch is the only filmmaker in my lifetime so far that I have watched his film or TV show And for the next week or two, this is all I think about. This is all I dream about. There's a reason why we did, um, 5 shows a week during season 3 about each episode, because there was that much to say. And you know what? We didn't even scratch the surface of what those episodes were doing. I mean, now I look back at what we were saying back then. I'm like, what the hell were we thinking? But it was so much fun at that time. There's no other filmmaker in our life now or going to be that is going to be like this. And so we need to celebrate this guy. We need to think about him. We need to continue to revel in his work. And if you think there are David Lynch books before, okay, now, like I said, because his work is now finite, it is now the floodgates are now going to open. We're going to see so many people talking about him. I mean, hell, even John Campea today on YouTube, a movie pundit who just talks about mainstream mall movies, did a segment about David Lynch dying today. Like I said, NASA, Naomi Watts, Kyle MacLachlan, which we will get to. Jake Wardle, Lisa Coronado. I mean, and then people who who are just friendly with me, who, just like Twin Peaks or David Lynch's films as well. They were all messaging me. And so, and I know from other people reading their stuff, their friends were messaging them. Okay. Nobody does this when a celebrity dies, not to this level, folks. David Lynch, again, touched us on such a nerve, in the brain and the heart and the soul and in the feels, everything that, I saw this one post today that I totally agree with, which was, be thankful that we were on the planet at the same time as people like Prince and David Bowie and David Lynch, that like just take that in and be like, hey, we got to spend a better part of our lives watching these films come out, going to the theater or getting the new 4K or whatever, just like, but the artist was still alive. In fact, we lived in a time where David Lynch was on Twitter and you could message him. There was a time 20 years ago on davidlynch.com, you could message him and he'd write you back. And not like, some intern. It was him writing you back. Again, I'm not going to come up with the right words, but I do want to say that David Lynch will forever be the most important filmmaker to me. I mean, hell, I spent 3 years of my life making a 4-hour film about 2 characters in Twin Peaks. It's would I have done would I've done that for like some side characters in Goodfellas? I mean, I love Martin Scorsese to pieces, but would I have spent 3 years of my life doing a fan work about Goodfellas? Other people might, and that's fantastic. But for me, it was all about David Lynch. It was all about being in that world. I love that we still get to be in his world when we watch his stuff. I'm thrilled that he existed in our world so we could have him in our lives. I mean, the guy spent close to 2.5 years telling us the weather, pulling little ping pong balls out of a bowl. I mean, what other filmmaker does that? What other filmmaker gets on YouTube every day and basically tells us the same weather every single day? But he did. Why? Because he cared. He cared about each and every one of us. He may have not talked to all of us. He might have not have communicated. He wasn't on social media as much as he was 20 years ago. But the dude cared. If you didn't care, I mean, you would know, right? I mean, you would get that sense. And he put himself out there every single day for a period of 4 years or so after the return. And just to come into our houses every morning and tell us what the weather was. It's never going to happen again. All right. Let me bring in some people here. We may have some guests floating in and out tonight. So, all right, let's bring you guys in. We have Mandy, Joey, and Ted here. Hello. Um, you know, I've also invited a bunch of other people. I've already heard from some saying for obvious reasons they are not able to make it. There's obviously a lot to process. And again, this show is not done as a way to, like, David Lynch died, so let's do a live show. This is, if you know this channel, you know that we love to talk about things and discuss things, and we also like to come together. I mean, for years, I know Ted went to the Twin Peaks Festival for years, and that was their way of, like, fans finding each other. But I didn't have that. I know Mandy went to the fest for a couple times as well. I didn't have that. There was a long period of time where, like, it was myself and a few friends that watched Twin Peaks when it came out, and then for about 10 years, nobody knew who David Lynch was or cared or talked to me about. I met one girl who that I'm still great friends with, and I met her in 99, 2000, and she goes, "Oh my God, like, you have Twin Peaks? I watched that." It was the first person I had met in 10 years that had I mean, obviously Lost Highway was big because of the soundtrack and all that, but in terms of Twin Peaks, nobody knew it, And so one of the things that I love so much about 2017 was that I got to meet people like Mandy and Joey and a bunch of other people, and then a lot of you in the chat. I love that. I mean, if anything, that was my favorite year of doing YouTube ever, because not only were we talking about Twin Peaks, it was back, but I got to meet such wonderful people. And so when I heard the news today, first thing I wanted to do, I texted a few people, messaged a few people. First thing I wanted to do was do this show. I wanted to do this at like 11:30 in the morning, but I couldn't. I was busy. I was not going to be available till 5 or so, 5:30. And but why? Not because I had anything like the perfect words to say. I just wanted to reconnect with all of you, because we all found each other years ago. Some of you are new. Hello, please subscribe. But we're all here now, and we're all talking about somebody who made our lives better in many, many, many ways. So I'm so happy you're here. Thank you for joining us. I'm so sorry for talking your ear off now for almost 20 minutes, but I had to get this out before it explodes later. So anyway, did you guys hear about this? Like, let me just go around real quick. Did you guys all hear this news from friends, or did you get this news from, like, some crappy article or something like that? Like, how did you find out? Whoever wants to go first. Ted, I know your time is limited, so.
Sure. Cameron, thanks for having us on. And before I answer your question, I mean, to your point about why we're doing this, I mean, when you said, "Hey, would you come on?" It's like, oh, that's what I need. I need to talk to some other David Lynch fans right now, because it's not enough to just read articles, and it's not enough to just think about it and endlessly scroll. I need to be with some David Lynch fans, so I appreciate this invitation. You texted me this afternoon, and you said that David Lynch had passed away. I immediately opened up social media, and I saw Sabrina Sutherland's post, and I saw the family's post from David Lynch's account. And my wife and I were about to go on a video call with somebody else, and I'm just like, "Oh my God." And she looks at me because she could tell, like, something was wrong. And I'm like, "David Lynch just passed away." And she's just like, it's one of those things that, it's going to come. But it's no less shocking when it does come, because he's given us so much wonderful, beautiful art, that to think that the man is gone, it's hard to wrap your head around. But it's also, I think, for me, very easy to say, but he's given us so much that will always be with us. And I think that's that's what's gotten me through the last hours without getting really too upset. Is
You
he's
know,
getting a lot that is always going to be with us.
like Stanley Kubrick gave us like 13 films, right? And he did very little press. So basically, the films and maybe some documentary footage we see or books, that's what we have. David Lynch gave us, you know, TV series, you know, and multiple series and several films and interviews and obviously books. But he did, like I said, did the weather report. He did. There's so much David Lynch material out there, and it's going to just go on and on and on because it's never going to die. All that stuff is just going to be there in the records forever. And I'm so happy that, like, you know, he wasn't making films in the 50s and 60s where we didn't have anything, right? I mean, we just have all this stuff. So let me bring Joel in here as well. Mandy, I know I messaged you. Did you find out from me or did you find out earlier before?
I did, from you. Thank you. Yeah. And then it was an instant like, oh my goodness. And then go and look, and there it was within a few minutes. So
yeah, you know, the first comment I got, of course, being social media the way it is, wrote source question mark. And I think I wrote back going, his producer. I mean,
yeah, it was everywhere.
Yeah.
Exactly. Joey, how about you? How did you find out?
Yeah, funny enough, I have the main David Lynch page like prioritized so I don't miss anything. So that came up first and I didn't believe it. So I immediately went to see if Sabrina had posted anything, and sure enough, that's where it was confirmed, and I kind of just stared at my phone. I don't know how much time passed, but yeah, that's how I found out.
Yeah, I mean, not that I didn't believe it, but I skimmed that paragraph because I'm so used to Sabrina posting really cool photos on social media. So I was like, oh, cool. And I had seen a picture similar to that guitar photo before. And then when I saw that the head was hanged and then I read her post, I was like, is this really happening? And I have talked to a few people today that have checked in and said, oh, you know, how you doing? And thank you, by the way. I love that you think about me, but I never even met the man. I mean, I'm thinking about his family and his friends that really did know him. That being said, I got to tell you, this hit me harder than I was expecting. But you know, death always comes sudden, and I was in a literal daze all day long. I didn't know. I just was like taking it all in as everybody's, you know, memories were coming in. And I mean, even Don Coscarelli, the director of Phantasm, posted not just like rest in peace, David. There's like a nice, heartwarming thing. I'm like, this guy affected not just us as fans. He affected other filmmakers. He affected, you know, every artist out there. And I think that, you know, people can be appreciated in their lifetime as David Lynch was, but I think his appreciation is going to go up tenfold now, because once you pass on, that's when people really deep dive. I mean, Joel, I mean, you've been deep diving into his work for years and years, but I think we're about to hit a whole new level now of meanings and interpretations as new fans, you know, come to, you know, find them and go in there. I mean, even just last week, right? The Matt, who does the Twin Peaks Sounds account, and Stephen Miller, they did that whole post about the book that Laura Palmer's carrying in high school, which I never thought 2 seconds to look at, is literally called what, the Owl in the Ring. It's like, I mean, that's insane that we're finding this out. What nearly 40 years later? I mean,
Yeah.
like, right. But then again, it's like, I don't think David Lynch and them thought that there was going to be something called 4K at one point that we'd be able to zoom in and see all this stuff. I think it was a little kind of like the Dust Bunnies thing in Blue Velvet with the radiator, right? It's like, it's a little thing that Lynch knew was there, but it wasn't important. But now we can see it, right? Joel, I I know you're not on social media a lot, but how did you find out? Did people message you, or did you just stumble on to check your email and boom, there was?
Yeah, I got a text. I don't know, around 1 o'clock or so, 1:30. So it was already in Variety or something. Somebody sent me a link, so I knew it was legit. And I did end up spending much of the day on Twitter, which I really haven't been on much in the past couple months.
Right.
But I thought this was an occasion, and I'll give their algorithm credit. The last time I checked, the For You was all David Lynch tributes, not literally nothing else in the entire column. So they got me on that at least.
I think there's a reason for that, because when I looked at the trending, I think there was like 472,000 posts about David Lynch. He's everywhere today.
Yeah.
And rightfully so. But when I was growing up, I didn't know anybody who knew David Lynch. And now to see so many people, it's like I didn't know. I mean, I know his family knows that he touched so many people's lives. I think today they're feeling it, because I am speechless. I'm literally speechless seeing how much is coming across my feed, and it's amazing. I saw one person's post today that I thought was it just hit me in the feels, where he says, "I know nobody will talk about me when I'm gone like this." So, yeah, it's and I know, Joel, you said that you had written so much about him that you're kind of at a loss of words to say, but I mean, he really is the most important filmmaker, I think, in our lives. And there's other great filmmakers out there.
Yeah.
But I almost, when I compare him to Kubrick, it's only because you can go back to a Kubrick film and see new things every time you see it. And I think Lynch obviously is the same type of thing.
And they both,
yeah.
Well, I was going to say they both have 10 films. I think Kubrick has like 13, but
right.
It's not a huge filmography.
He doesn't count the first 3.
Fair enough.
Yeah. But yeah, it's I don't even know. I really don't even know what to say. I mean, there's so many. We have nearly 200 people watching us right now. Thank you. Thank you, Evan, for your super chat. I really appreciate it. And Badger70, thank you again. Yeah, it's I posted today, that that our hearts go out to his friends and family, and then I added that the family means all of you as well, because I feel like, we sometimes talk about the Twin Peaks family, right? But it is a real thing. And obviously now there are t-shirts and things that people can, but back in the day, if someone said they knew Twin Peaks or David Lynch, you knew they were good company, or mostly good company. I don't know. there's always that occasional outlier out there. But it was great. And, as someone once said to me, any fan of Twin Peaks is a friend of mine. And I guess I just didn't realize how many friends that we have out there, because after Twin Peaks season 3 was over, I mean, there was always the talk about, was there going to be another season, another movie or whatever. But as time went on, this channel, for obvious reasons, because it became a David Lynch type of channel, it would get views on or off depending on what the topic was. It wasn't like back in 2017 where it was just like an avalanche of people, because people, had just moved on to other things, other people and all that, and other filmmakers, and totally understandable. And that's why I always praise that summer of 2017, because I was just like, wow, I wish I had all you guys in my real life and not just on my social media life. But so I'm just so happy that all of you guys are here tonight, because I knew that if we did a show tonight, we needed this. We all, like Ted said, we need this. We need to talk about this. Just to kind of get it out there, because all day long I've been internalizing this. Nobody at my work would understand if I said David Lynch died. They'd be like, who? but on social media and other places, we can all come together as fans and friends and just talk about this. I you know,
it's
feel
nice
free.
to it's nice to see the positive side of it for once, which is ironic considering it's somebody's death. But that seems to be the only time people come together,
That's not true. When John Thorne writes a book, we all come together too, so.
Sure, yeah. Once or every year or so.
Right. It's like, we've all been kind of, well, what's Lynch's project gonna be? Is it gonna be that Netflix animation movie?
Yeah.
Is it gonna be the Carrie Page movie? Is it gonna be Unrecorded Night? I would like to think if it wasn't for COVID and all that, I'm thinking we probably would have gotten something else.
Yeah. Well, they pretty much said so, right? That Netflix wanted to shoot and he was hesitant because of the pandemic and then they just moved on basically, right? That was what I remember hearing.
Yeah. And also the fact that with the emphysema and all that, he didn't want to risk it. And I don't blame him. You know? So, and
I did hear, I haven't read the article that people were linking about it, but I had heard that because either he was evacuated or because of the smoke, it really worsened the condition from the fires last week. So that supposedly may have pushed him over the edge.
I obviously don't know.
Yeah.
There's nothing being said. That being said, I would understand that because he's been so insulated for a long time, and then to go outside and with that kind of air quality.
Crazy.
I mean, everybody I know in LA, I've been writing to them saying, "Are you okay? How's the air quality?" Because that can really get into your lungs. And I don't know. I mean, again, I don't know if he was alone when they evacuated, if it was they evacuated the whole neighborhood, or whatever. But he could have met somebody too that had a cold. I don't know. I mean, there's all kinds of things.
Yeah.
I mean, we'll have to wait for the official thing, but let's just say that the LA fire situation did not help things.
No. No, definitely not. And there's also I feel a lot of irony. It's kind of haunting in a way that fire seems to have contributed given his whole body of work and all the kind of fire motifs all over. And then it's like somebody jokingly tweeted a couple weeks ago, David Lynch is going to just walk into the fire, drag his oxygen tank behind him, and that's how he's going to go, or something like that. And then it was like, oh, wow, that's not literally what happened, but
I didn't even think about that. But what did pop in my head is that we're 4 days away from his birthday.
Yeah.
And
and I know.
And that also hit me.
Inauguration day.
Yeah. But it's also
it's
also my grandfather's birthday, and
wow! Well, happy birthday! Oh,
well, he's deceased.
Okay, yeah.
Well, Cameron, it's also my mother's birthday, which is
wow.
So many people that share that birthday, and David Lynch being one of them. That was my first thought as well. Like, oh my gosh, days before his birthday. It just and with the fires, I mean, I've heard the log lady in my head all the last week or so. Devil, right? Just over and over again, and I think to your point that's very true. It certainly didn't help things, and the likelihood that he probably didn't pass at his house, and I'm sure he would have wanted to, is kind of sad. But what has been on my mind all afternoon has just been really what a total artist David Lynch was in every sense of the word. And all artists are different, and all artists bring different things to their art. But David Lynch, I think for us and many others in particular, brought something very, very different, a different vision, a different way to see beauty in a dark world. And David Lynch talked about the beauty of the world a lot, and I think it's really that's part of his legacy is in a very dark world, in a very dark time that we're alive, that he would see beauty in things. And he would always talk about what a glorious day, a beautiful day it was. And Cameron, you started this off by talking about how lucky we were to be alive during the time of David Lynch, and I agree with you 100%. It's the fact that we got to experience his films, his TV shows as they came out, and that we got to make friends. That was a very small group of people at times.
For many years, it was very small.
For many years, and really to form that kinship and family that you talked about. That's why this hits hard. And I'll just close by saying, you said, well, I could say, oh, David Lynch passed away at work and nobody would know what he was talking about. I was shocked at people who reached out to me this afternoon that I had no idea they had any idea who David Lynch was, and that they immediately made the connection to me and how quickly they. So this spread fast and it spread loudly.
Yeah, I got notified by somebody who I haven't talked to since I was 16 years old, saying, "Hey, do you remember when we saw Wild at Heart opening weekend?" And it's just like, this is somebody. I mean, I haven't talked to in decades.
Wow.
And it's just like it just floods back all the memories.
I had friends
brings back some memories, right, Joey?
Yeah, I had friends of friends, people that I'm not even familiar with, like say, "Hey, saw this, thought of you." People I never really were really close to, or reaching out and say, "Hey, we thought of you and I saw this." So the web just goes so far and wide. Like you said before, it's like unbelievable.
And sometimes you don't even know how many or who's watched your videos, right?
That too.
And so, like, if we feel a certain kinship with David Lynch and other people feel this kinship with David Lynch, what I wasn't prepared for, and I'm sure people like John Thorne or Josh Eisenstadt or other people, what they weren't prepared for was how many people out there not only feel that way about Lynch, but feel about them and us, because in a way, we kind of help be kind of I wouldn't say a gateway, but you know what I mean? We helped usher them in to conversations and discussions about the work. So they associate all of us with him as well. So you're getting it from the friends, you're getting it from the family, you're getting it from the, podcasters. And so, and like I said, we're all family. And sometimes families bicker, right? And some family members hold grudges. But
I've almost known you a decade now, almost 2 years shy of a decade.
That being said, if you're a fan of David Lynch, then we have something we agree on.
Yeah.
Right. And you talk about, being alive at the time of Lynch. I don't, as far as my conscience, I've known him almost my whole life. Because when I was 5, that's when I think the Elephant Man went on cable. And those opening 5 minutes scared the hell out of me. That I didn't even see John Merrick. I would just see the elephants and her screaming. I'm out. I'm done. And baby crying and smoke. And I was like, what the? And then I would see, like, coming up on Max at midnight, Eraserhead. And I was like, what the hell's that? They would show clips. And then when Dune came out, I saw like 10 minutes of Dune, and I said, this isn't Star Wars. I don't understand this. And I left, And it wasn't until like 8th grade, 1990, when like a teacher assistant who knew I liked movies and knew I was like watching things like A Clockwork Orange and Five Corners and Women on the Verge of a Nervous Breakdown. He knew I liked weird stuff. He goes, have you ever seen Blue Velvet? And I said, isn't that a Romanian movie? Because I remember seeing the trailers in 1986, and there was like no real dialogue. It was just Isabella Rossellini with that wig and the knife, and it just looked like Eastern Europe, or to me. Okay. And he goes, no, it's actually about like Norman Rockwell Americana. And I was like, really? So I like join one of those little video clubs where you could get 10 movies for $1, but you had to buy like 6 more, and that was one of the free movies I got, pan and scan, of course, and watched it, and it was just like, wow, this is incredible. And then just a few months later, Twin Peaks premiered, and so it was like that was the, and then in 1990, folks, not only did I see Blue Velvet 4 years late, but I still saw it. Twin Peaks premiered. Wild at Heart came out in August, right? American Chronicles came out, I think, September. And then season 2 started in late September, right? And then Industrial Symphony came out in November. Like, it was to get into a filmmaker and have him drop that much stuff in 1 year. And then it was like radio silence for, after Firewall with Me, it was like 5 years and very little. And then there was, and then in 99 and 2001, we got the 1-2 drop of Straight Story of Mulholland Drive. And that's only because Mulholland Drive had been already done as a TV pilot, but it's just, but having those two close together. And then, after Inland Empire was over 10 years before we got The Return. So having that much stuff in 1990, I mean, I was just like, I don't know. It was just, that was one of the greatest years it was a terrible year in many ways because I was 14 years old and I was, you're in high school and it's awkward and it's weird and, and all that. But to be a David Lynch fan was fantastic. And whenever they would say, when season 2 came out, and they would say, oh, it was terrible because it came out Saturday nights at 10 o'clock and, everyone was out partying. I wasn't. I was 14 years old. It was the greatest night of my life. It was like, my mom was either out or asleep and I could just be downstairs with the TV watching Twin Peaks at 10 o'clock at night. And then 11 o'clock, my 1 or 2 friends would call me and be like, what'd you think? And it was, I don't know. He is responsible. I know people talk about how frustrating and maddening some of his, especially when season 3 was airing week to week. But he is responsible for truly some of the happiest moments of my life watching anything, cinema, TV. And now when you watch season 3, I don't know if any of you guys have done this. I'm sure many of you guys have. But if you watch season 3 now, as opposed to like just 2017, go back and watch it now and do like 5 or 6 episodes in a row. Just bang them out. It's crazy because we saw what we saw in 2017 and it has not changed. We've changed. And you go back now and you watch it and it's just like, wow, this flows like wonderfully. We all thought there were stops and starts and awkward pauses. But if you just watch like 5 episodes in a row, it's amazing how smooth that thing plays now. It's amazing how much into the premonition him and Frost got into it in terms of like it. In many ways, Mr. C being out in the world kind of predicts the whole pandemic year in a strange way, and you feel that vibe. It almost came out too early in a way, even though it was really appreciated. People loved it. I think it's better now, 10 years on. That's just me. Have you guys gone back to rewatch season 3 anytime soon?
I put the first, anytime I have to take a flight, I put the first 5 or 6 episodes on my like laptop and I just watch Twin Peaks the whole flight and usually gets me all the way.
Mandy.
No, I've got my I've got a book right next to me. I'm ready to go through the book, go through the Return, and I just haven't been able to do it yet, but I will one day.
No, I understand. You got the Ominous Whoosh book with you, right?
Yes. Yeah, that's it.
Well, John Thorne will be happy to know that.
Yeah.
I did talk to John Thorne today. He's traveling, so he can't make it, but he would like to do one of these fairly soon as well, because he's got a lot to say, as you can imagine.
Unfortunately, I have to go, guys. Great
talk. Thank you for coming on, Ted. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for being part of this.
Of course. Thank you. Have a wonderful day. All right. And when he goes, Joe came. Joe, have you been waiting for a while? Have you been waiting for a while? You just came in? Oh, wow. Perfect timing. Perfect timing.
How's everybody doing?
Do you guys know Joe? He has his own YouTube channel now. He just started it. he is the one responsible for all those amazing autographs you see on social media. Joe, you may want to tilt your camera up. Right now, you are the mystery man with just your nose. There you go.
That good?
Perfect.
All
So Joe, I'll ask you, where did you hear this news? How did you find out? And obviously, like you, I'm sure you were immediately stunned into silence.
Yeah. Yeah. Quite a somber day in the Anthony household. I was actually on Twitter reading a Bob Euchre story since he had just passed. And I got finished with the Euchre thing. And, sometimes Twitter will just update. Update went straight to, I can't remember what the post was. And then I stared at it. I'm like, well, I refresh and and then there was a million things. I was just like, oh my. Yep. I think it's, I didn't hear much here. I just hopped on, so I didn't hear what everybody else had to say, but it's not like it's the shock. I think we knew he's, been battling some health issues and stuff. It's just it's the finality of it. I think that's, pretty shocking. It's hard to deal with somebody who's as important in all of our worlds, really, as David Lynch is. So it's it's quite a load today for sure.
Yeah, like I said, I've just been in a daze all day, and I just wanted to hop on here like earlier if I could have, and I literally would have been here like all afternoon. Because I don't know what to do with myself right now. And and I have family issues I got to deal with in an hour or so, but I got to get the kid ready for bed and all that kind of stuff. But it's I couldn't go through today and not come on here. He's just, he was a very important filmmaker to me long before I ever even thought about talking about him publicly. There are people we know that have, went to the fest and all that. And they, they were public about it ever since, the show came out pretty much. And for a long time, I talked about it with a few friends, but I never posted about it publicly, never talked about it. Because at that time it was the IMDb message boards and everyone was just so crazy on there. And I was just like, you know what, David Lynch and Twin Peaks and all that, it's almost like church for me. And I don't want to like put that out there and then have people like firing back. So I just kept it private. And then I don't know, on a whim, I was just like, you know what, I'm just going to talk about it. And when I first started, there would be like 10 people watching, and then over time, obviously, you just more and more people know where you're coming from, and so they appreciate anything like that. But it's good.
No, I was just saying my art, similar to you, my relationship with Lynch and Lynch's movies goes all the way back to the 80s, so back to Dune even, so Lost Highway to me was so good, and I had turned some friends on to it, so there was at least a handful of people back in that time. I was in high school for Twin Peaks, so we watched that when I could. So it's, I did hear from several of my friends growing up that there was the first thing they thought of when they saw the news. So it's good to see that. And we don't have too many folks just out there outside of our little peak world that is that deep into Lynch. But
aren't you surprised by happily surprised by the outpouring of emotion that's all over social media? Like, I knew obviously if David Lynch passes, like if Steven Spielberg passes, there's going to be a lot of people too. But this is hitting on such a level that like I'm seeing people I never even thought would talk about David Lynch talking about David Lynch. I'm seeing, the IFC changed their whole marquee. There were theaters dimming their lights for him. When David Lynch was scrapping away for 5 years making Eraserhead, did he ever think? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's unbelievable. Let me I want want to let's see. Let me read Kyle's post here. Let's see here. My God, my notifications are they've never stopped.
I know.
It's unbelievable. Let me show this off here. Couple. His first wife, Peggy, she posted this drawing she did in 1970 or 71 of him.
That's fantastic.
Yeah. Let's see here. Oops. And then this is what Kyle wrote. And if you have not seen Kyle's post, it is on Facebook and it is on Instagram. I'm going to read it to you guys because you definitely need to hear it if you have not seen it. So Kyle wrote this earlier today. This might qualify as one of the greatest eulogies of all time. I'll let you guys be the judge of that. 42 years ago, for reasons beyond my comprehension, David Lynch plucked me out of obscurity to star in his first and last big budget movie. He clearly saw something in me that even I didn't recognize. I owe my entire career and life, really, to his vision. Let me just pause for a second. For Kyle MacLachlan, basically to acknowledge in that statement that if it wasn't for David Lynch, he probably would not know his wife, his kids. I mean, that's how far back David Lynch has impacted this man's life. What I saw in him was an enigmatic and intuitive man with a creative ocean bursting forth inside of him. He was in touch with something the rest of us wish we could get to. Our friendship blossomed on Blue Velvet and then Twin Peaks, and I always found him to be the most authentically alive person I'd ever met. David was in tune with the universe and his own imagination on a level that seemed to be the best version of human. He was not interested in answers because he understood that questions are the drive that make us who we are. They are our breath. While the world has lost a remarkable artist, I've lost a dear friend who imagined a future for me and allowed me to travel in worlds I could never have conceived on my own. I can see him now standing up to greet me in his backyard with a warm smile and big hug and that Great Plains honk of a voice. We talk coffee, the joy of the unexpected, the beauty of the world, and laugh. His love for me and mine for him came out of the cosmic fate of two people who saw the best things about themselves in each other. I will miss him more than the limits of my language can tell and my heart can bear. My world is that much fuller because I knew him, and that much emptier now that he's gone. David, I remain forever changed and forever your Kale. Thank you for everything. Yeah, that's Hall of Famer right there, folks. And that can only be written by from your heart and like immediately from your heart. That's not something he sat there for 10 hours and thought about. That's just that's what David brought out of him on just an intuitive level. So think about that, folks.
Hey, Cameron, I don't know if you read what Naomi Watts wrote as well.
I did.
She wrote something really nice.
Yeah, let me pull that up. Sorry, folks. I got a lot of tabs open. I have a lot of things in progress before this happened. So, and NASA's post just
that was cool.
That was cool.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you guys saw this. Let me see if I can do this here. This cool post here. The piano roll of Laura Palmer's theme from Twin Peaks, the visual representation of two mountain peaks in the music was a cosmic coincidence, which shocked both Lynch and Badalamenti when they discovered it. Like the notes go up as two mountains.
And if you watch that video, keep rising, now fall.
True.
Makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
I was
Um,
listening to The World Spins tonight,
Yeah,
and it's crazy to think all three of them are gone now. You know?
right. Yeah.
Mm.
So this is what Naomi Watts wrote. My heart is broken. My buddy Dave, the world will not be the same without him. His creative mentorship was truly powerful. He put me on the map. The world I've been trying to break into for 10 plus years, flunking auditions left and right. Finally, I sat in front of a curious man, beaming with light, speaking words from another era, making me laugh and feel at ease. How did he even see me when I was so well hidden and I'd even lost sight of myself? She talks about in the behind the scenes of Mulholland Drive that she actually thought about committing suicide off Mulholland Drive.
Mm.
And that ended up being the movie that she was in. So it's this man has touched many people's lives here. This is from NASA. Keep your eye on the donut and not on the hole. In memory of David Lynch, we will continue to explore the otherworldly and the unknown. We will focus not on the loss, but on what we gained from the years we shared this planet with you. We will see you in our dreams. That's the official NASA uh, social media account. I mean, I don't know anybody, other filmmakers who are going to get that. Maybe Spielberg, but you know. And then Mark Frost writes, thanks to all for your kind remembrances on this awful day. Words will come later, only feelings at the moment. Mourn and remember him, but don't forget to celebrate too. We won't see his like again. The man from another place has gone home. It's pretty it's just, and then here's the IFC, David Lynch, the best to ever do it.
They were always good about putting on all his stuff. Like every couple months, they would have like a whole David Lynch like block every year.
Even the North Bend Theater up in Washington, they changed their marquee. And right outside here is Cheryl Lee and Kyle MacLachlan's handprints here, and soon to be Ray Wise's as well. Let's see here. It's a really somebody did this thing of like him as Charlie Brown. I'm pretty sure I'm connected to the moon. That was one of his most infamous Twitter posts. And then somebody else put up this picture from The Fabelmans with the young Steven Spielberg saying thank you, and David Lynch saying my pleasure, which is a scene from the movie. Spoilers there. Funny enough, what people may not know is that Steven Spielberg was a lifelong like friend of his. Like he almost directed the season 2 premiere of Twin Peaks.
That's right. That's right.
And then Lynch was like, "Nah, I'd rather do it." So, but you know, but yeah, we got close to Spielberg directing the "I've heard about you" scene.
Goodness.
Yeah, but he was. I think he was busy making Hook at the time, so you know. But yeah, I love this post too. One day the sadness will end, but I don't think today's the day. That was back when he was doing the weather reports on davidlynch.com 25 years ago. So yeah.
Been this weird heaviness, right? And I you know, I'm trying to do my job, so I'm turning on just the soundtracks and just listening to them, and like you had said earlier, like The World Spins come on and I'm like, nope, I can't.
All right, we have another guest here. This is Max Avery. He wrote this amazing book on Dune, and he also got to interview David about Dune, which was incredible. I know we talked off camera about it, but I don't know if that was part of our actual discussion. Can you tell us a little bit about that funny interview you did with him?
Oh yeah, well, I mean, he was. It was interesting because I never set out to talk to David because I just assumed it's some. You know, I knew how anathema that film was for him. You know, Dune is a 4-letter word to David Lynch, yeah, he. You know, like I basically I was looking for Kyle, and I got a contact with you know, to David's people as opposed to Kyle's people, and I was like, well, let me take a shot at David, and I sent one email. And just to give you guys some perspective, like when I wrote my Dune book, I interviewed like 60 people, and some people were like, no. Some people were like, sure, and they did it right away. Some people were a Hollywood yes, which is yes, I'll do it, and then I don't hear from them for 2 years. But
Right.
David with one email, and they were like, yes, you can talk to him. He will give you this very short amount of time. You can't record it. You can't record the Zoom. Basically, I guess maybe he was sensitive about his appearance, or he didn't want to put on makeup or whatever, and he just wanted to be himself, very casual. I think he was in his woodshed, which had a little Mulholland Drive street sign. He was the dictionary definition of everything you've ever heard about David Lynch. He was like Jimmy Stewart, he was just like, oh shucks, hey, it's great to talk to you, and he couldn't have been nicer, and he was, he kind of put me at ease, and he made it very fun and easy to talk to him, and and if you've read the book, you know that the interview is there almost verbatim, and it's a very sweet little piece, and and it just opened up the doors to all this other talent who were then willing to talk to me all of a sudden, because as my friend Jordan Hoffman said, I was like, oh, I got David Lynch. He's like, oh, it's a real book then.
Yeah, and I love the way you approached it too, because you knew that David Lynch had kind of stock answers for things, and so you started asking him questions right off the top to that he with those answers already in the question, so he couldn't rely on that as the answer.
Yeah. That's an old movie journalist trick. If you're talking to somebody about something that they have a boilerplate for, you say it first. And then there's
You said before, yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting. I'm actually right in the middle of writing a sort of a tribute piece for Inverse. I guess I could put it out to you guys, like how, since we're all kind of processing the passing, how did how does Dune kind of fall into the pantheon for you guys as Lynch fans, especially now that we know like he'll never get to do a director's cut or any of that?
I think Dune has aged very, very well, and I think part of that is once we got away from the MCA pan and scan 80s video cassette, and now that we can see it in 4K and Arrow's 4K, I mean, it's just whatever you think about the film, just seeing it crystal clear, beautiful, the sound there, it's just, you can almost see the movie he was trying to make amongst what was given to us. And I know a lot of people are fans. I mean, people to this day will tell me I liked his film more than the Villeneuve's 5-hour film. It's for all the talk where you would always say like it wasn't my movie. It's such a David Lynch movie. Like there's so many aspects to it. Yeah, it may not have been his film in terms of editorially and that type of thing, but there's so much in there where you're just like that. It's kind of like at the beginning of the Straight Story when you see the dogs running across the street and you're just like, well, we're in a Lynch movie. It just we just the framing is so him. It's funny I mentioned the Straight Story. Freddie Francis did the cinematography for both. So
no, it's funny too, and this is actually something I wanted to bring up to David, and I think he interrupted me, and I never got to actually ask it. But like, he was very inspired by the movies of Jacques Tati, And I think, if you've ever seen a Jacques Tati movie, like he was this French director, he did all these sort of pseudo, like slapsticky kind of, they were almost like silent movies with sound. They're extremely visual, and they were all kind of, the frames were always like these like kind of 3-ring circuses where something's happening here and something's happening there, and then there's whatever's in the middle. And yeah, and Dune, maybe more than any of his other movies, to me feels like that, because there's always like little bits of business happening in the periphery, which of course you would never have seen on the pan and scan VHS that you grew up with.
Right. Yeah, I remember David was very upset about VHS in the 80s, and he preferred Laserdisc. He was like, because obviously it was in widescreen. But then he was kind of soured on that because because the technology got better and better. But I remember being in film school, and they showed us that cinematography documentary, Visions of Light, and there's a moment in there where they show the opening of Blue Velvet, but it was in widescreen, and my mouth dropped because this is like 94. I still hadn't seen the film in widescreen. And I'm sitting there watching it going, oh my God, it looks gorgeous. Look, the kids are crossing the street. You can read the whole stop sign. And, was it panning with the kids? And I, much like, other filmmakers like John Carpenter, I think once widescreen became normalized for people and you could see their films, it's, the framing is so deliberate, and you can't see, like in Lost Highway, right? When Pete's sitting on the chair, it kind of mimics Blue Velvet in the yard. It's otherworldly in the widescreen, but on pan scan, it was like, here he is in the chair sitting on the grass.
And it's funny too, because if you watch a lot of movies from prior to whatever 2005, a lot of them are shot for television. It's like, even Stanley Kubrick, I believe, was shooting with TV in mind, and I think actually put in his will that his movies could not be shown in pan and scan, in letterbox form.
Right.
Like they had to be 4:3 on home video, because he just didn't know that something else was, coming a few years after he was going to die.
Well, Stanley Kubrick also didn't, he predicted a lot of things, but he didn't predict the personal computer, right? For 2001, the computers weren't going to get bigger like how they were going to get smaller in our pockets.
Although he did predict the tablet.
Oh, that's true.
Which is in 2001 and in Dune, because the production designer of both movies was Tony Masters. So, yeah.
And Max, for those of you who don't know, he's done other podcasts about this, but he has read what was to become David Lynch's second Dune film, which is pretty incredible. That because even David didn't remember writing, but you found it in the archives, and I think I compared it to, if Dune was Frankenstein, this would have been more The Bride of Frankenstein. This would have been David Lynch a little bit more unshackled and able to make a David Lynch version, a Gremlins 2 version of Dune, if you will.
No, and I love that comparison. And yeah, did the rest of you guys read that piece in Wired that I did about that script?
No, I'll look into that. I'm curious what Cliff's Notes version, I'm sure, because I'm sure you could go on for a while about it, but how does it kind of stack up in terms of the Villeneuve one? Well, I guess Villeneuve, that's part 2 of, so I guess it would be if Villeneuve did a third one. That would be this, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Dune Part 2 is a remake of the last 25 minutes of David Lynch.
Right. Yeah, it's confusing.
Yeah, and so it's a little more detail. This was going to be Dune Messiah. And, and David actually said that was his favorite of the first 3 Herbert books. And it showed, because he really got into this one character called Cytail, who's a face changer, which that whole thing of like this is really like the first point of that whole idea of changing your identity, which becomes like a huge thread throughout the rest of the Lynch filmography. You know, Lost Highway, and there was a One Saliva Bubble, which ideas from that went into Twin Peaks: The Return, and yeah, or even Mulholland Drive. You know, there's some elements of that. Yeah, it was clearly an idea he was fascinated with, and you know, and it was in Herbert's book. Like, he didn't invent it, but he clearly was going to have a blast with that. And yeah, there's even, I don't know if you guys have seen Dune recently, but it's like there's this one character played by Leonardo Cimino, who's like the Baron's doctor. He's like the guy who picks at his little pustules on his face and stuff. So that character is the only character in Dune that David Lynch invented that is not in the book at all. In the Dune 2 screenplay, it's revealed that character is Scytale. So he actually is a character from the books, but he's shifted his face. Yeah, and he's the character who basically takes the dead Duncan Idaho to another planet, which is the most surreal fucking thing I've ever read in my life. It was like, it feels like a scene from Ronnie Rocket, or, you know, a very surreal kind of fever dream. Yeah, it was funny too, because I think, what was it, like a year ago, they announced that he was looking to develop like an animated movie about characters who live in a carpet.
Right, and he wrote it with Caroline Thompson, who did Edward Scissorhands, and Netflix said no.
Those bastards.
That was Snoot World, right?
That's
what it was called.
Yeah, Snoot World. That was it. And so that also had its origins in the Dune 2 draft that I read, where there's a bunch of these shapeshifter characters, and they're having like a party, and they're like, I don't know, like one of them turns into like a tubular thing that has 18 heads, and then they all shrink. They take some drug, and then they all shrink down go into the carpet, and it's so trippy. It's a little like that Steve Martin joke, you know, let's get small. You know.
I have this theory after hearing all this that you know, Lynch was so upset that he didn't get to make the second Dune that he just started using ideas for it in all his other films.
Yeah, because Messiah is nutty. It's way nuttier than the first one, so I could see him wanting to push to that one. He never got to do it.
Now the question is, would you trade Blue Velvet and Twin Peaks to get that second Dune film?
That's kind of the article I'm writing now. It's like the article I'm writing now is sort of making the point that like Dune is a fascinating glimpse into the filmmaker he could have been. You know, I think you know, there was a part of him that really wanted to go down this neo-noir road, which he, you know, basically devoted most of the rest of his career to, with a few exceptions, obviously. But yeah, I think he wound up going almost exclusively down that road because he just didn't feel like he wanted to be the large scale sort of world builder anymore. You know, he funneled some of that into Twin Peaks, but it's like, yeah, like he really had like a fantasist's mind. Like he, you know, I think if you read the Ronnie Rocket script, you know, it's very surreal, and it would have involved a lot of special effects and world building, and it would have been like its own sort of universe, more like Eraserhead was, but on a much bigger scale. And like Carlo Rambaldi was going to build the title character. He was going to be like an animatronic guy who was, you know, plugged into all sorts of electrical equipment and stuff, and screaming like industrial metal or something.
Well, yeah, I think Dune was such a like you said, a 4-letter word to him that the rest of his movies all have two words in it, right? Blue Velvet, Twin Peaks, well, not Far Walk with Me, obviously, but Lost Highway, Mulholland Drive, Inland Empire. Like he wouldn't go back to that one word thing. I guess Dumbland. But,
well, it's funny because one of the projects he was circling in the early 90s was an adaptation of this manga called Domu. And I'm like, that's the only other time I think in his career that he circled doing science fiction again. And yeah, it's funny that they're like 4-letter words that begin with T.
Yeah, my greatest what if would have been, and I'm glad he didn't do it, but if I could step through another portal and see it, I would love to have seen what he would have done with Fast Times at Ridgemont High when they offered it to him. Having that cast, having Sean Penn as Spicoli in David Lynch's, already directing Jennifer Jason Leigh and Nicolas Cage, and at those early years, that would have been that would have been insane. But he said he said, "Sorry guys, I don't think this one's for me." But I would have loved to have seen how he would have, because I mean Twin Peaks is a lot of things, but one of it is a high school show as well. There is a high school, and I would have loved to have seen that mentality in the Valley.
But what about the rest of you? Do any of you other fine folks have any sort of thoughts about Dune, or the filmmaker he potentially could have been? Like would he have wound up just becoming like another
Rennie
sort of
Harlin?
like a casualty of a successful franchise, in the same way that George Lucas, Peter Jackson are. Like, I think, like those guys were basically destroyed by their own creation.
I think Return of the Jedi would have helped him. I don't know if
I don't think so.
It was so many constraints on that, though.
Yeah. I think he would have felt, too much pressure. He wouldn't have had a good time. The movie wouldn't have come out good. I loved hearing that story. He was getting a headache hearing about, Wookiees and stuff. So like, I don't think it would have gone over well. Him doing I think he went down the right path ultimately.
Yeah, exactly.
That's my opinion.
Mm-hmm. It all
would have been cool to see alternate. Yeah.
Yeah,
and I have no.
Go ahead.
I'm not a big Dune person, so I think I bought the VHS, the gold version, and because I just had to have it, but I didn't care for it, and I've never really it, so maybe I will now.
Well, it's interesting because it's like a lot of Lynch fans, I think, kind of circumvent that movie, or they sort of pretend it doesn't exist. They're like, oh well, David disowns it, it's not really a thing. And I remember what's his name, is that author who has 3 names and he killed himself.
Yeah, I know who you're talking about.
Mark Fisher.
No,
not Mark Fisher.
He's the one that had the ponytail.
He did.
David Foster Wallace.
David Foster Wallace. Yeah. David Foster Wallace did this whole huge profile of David Lynch in '97 for Lost Highway, and like he basically skips over Dune in like one paragraph. He's just like, "Oh, this movie sucks," and it was just a stepping stone to real movies like Blue Velvet.
I was introduced to Lynch via Dune. I was 10 years old and saw it in the theater. So it's funny that I'll look back at it, and at the time, as when I was a kid, I enjoyed it. It was enough for me to each Lynch thing that came out after that I went to see. And I do think everything else was much, much different, obviously. And I do think I agree with everybody else. He went down the right path following that. But to me at the time, especially as a 10-year-old kid, Dune was certainly its own world. It's pretty cool. So it's a good thing that I got to see when it came out as a kid.
Did you get the glossary at the theater?
I don't remember that. If I did, I believe it or not, Mr. Collector here. If I did, I don't have it anymore.
I think for me, it grew on me over time. I didn't care for it at all the first time I saw it. And literally each time I see it, I like it a little more. And the last time was during the theatrical re-release they did last year. And I quite enjoyed seeing that. And I actually think in some ways the Villeneuve films have helped me almost from 2 directions. One, they're very different. So it's almost like, and I've never read the books, to be clear, too. So I don't have that in with them. But because they're so different, it's kind of like it almost allows his Dune to be this interesting oddity without as much pressure on it. But also I feel in some ways gave me more of an in to kind of see the weirdness in it, if that makes sense. I think the first time I saw it, it was like, it felt very stiff, very awkward to me. The stuff that was there about the spice and the visions and all of this, it didn't feel like the dream stuff in other Lynch movies to me. And seeing it the last time in the theater, after seeing the Villeneuve's everything, suddenly I could kind of be like, okay, yeah, there's like a kind of a psychedelic quality to this. Like it's not just talking about the stuff. Like there's a texture to it that's a little bit dreamy as well. So yeah, I'm kind of in between, I guess, where I am appreciating it more and more when it wasn't really core to my Lynch experience before.
Yeah, the details, like I think Max and I talked about when the Guild Navigator shows up at the beginning. In the widescreen, you can actually see the guy on the side sweeping the slime up as they're walking, right? And those are the kind of details that I live for, because in the Paniscan you couldn't even see that. But, that's the kind of stuff that Lynch, like you said, getting all the, every angle. There's he's filling the frame there.
I had to drive really far to see the Dune and the Inland Empire re-releases. And both times I just didn't time it right, and I was late and missed that first encounter. Well, the second scene or first scene in both films, second scene, where the character encounters like a really strange other character, Grace Zabriskie in Inland Empire and the Guild Navigator in Dune, and those are like maybe my favorite scenes. I walk in the theater literally, and it's like end of the scene both times. I'm like, really?
Yeah, and I believe the Guild Navigator scene was, I think, one of if not the last scenes shot for the movie. And Carlo Rambaldi, who's the guy who made E.T., he built the big creature in the tank, and they wheeled it out. And David was so happy. He was like, "Oh, this is fantastic!" And then he starts looking at it, and he's like, "Oh, it needs something. It needs some afterbirth." And he's like, Carlo, can you get some afterbirth and rub it on the creature?" And Carlo Rambaldi's Italian, and he's like, "What?" and then he has a translator who translates it to him, and he's like, "What?" Yeah.
He ordered some real brains from Germany for Blue Velvet. I remember seeing that special feature being like, oh my God. Like they ordered from like a laboratory, someone who had donated their body. I guess they thought they were donating their body to science. It ended up immortalized in a film. What? Yeah.
Lives forever. Yeah. And I talked to the assistant director of Blue Velvet, who also worked on Dune, and he recalled going around North Carolina trying to find a guy with no ears. And he said part of the problem is if you have no ears, you're like at the top of a list to get like whatever skin grafts
to get an ear.
Ears. Yeah. And but he managed to find a guy with one missing ear, and so that was a compromise.
So that actor really didn't have an ear? That wasn't just
yeah, I thought that was
not
makeup.
an actor.
I never realized.
Yeah, he's not an actor. I mean, like, if you watch the movie, he doesn't. I don't think he has one line.
No,
right.
I never. Wow,
yeah,
that's crazy.
Yeah, when the Twin Peaks Fire Walk with Me Missing Pieces came out, and they have that scene with Annie in the hospital at towards the end where the nurse takes the Alcave ring and leaves. I always thought, in retrospect, I wish he had put that in the end after the credits. I mean, I would have predicted the whole Marvel after credits thing, And people would have been like, sat through this whole Laura Palmer film and then seen that tag at the end and been like, where's our sequel? Because that would have gotten people really amped. Whereas the movie as it is, it kind of ends with this kind of elegiac closure. So people are like, oh, I guess it's over. But I don't know. I think that would have been awesome if he could have just fitted that 1-2 minute scene at the end. I think that would have just made people, it would have made me go out screaming.
Mm-hmm.
Like the ring's going on further. Now the nurse has it.
Well, and that's an interesting one too, because Twin Peaks: Fire Walk with Me is such a beautiful departure from almost everything that people loved about the show. Like nobody gets to make that kind of swing. It's like, yeah, like they're not going to do a Guardians of the Galaxy movie that all of a sudden has incest and stuff in it. But like, yeah, like I think, like, do you?
Froze?
As well.
Repeat your question. You froze a little.
Oh, just do you guys? How do you guys feel about Fire Walk with Me? Because it's like that was also vilified
when
it came out in the same way that Dune was.
We all love it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that's the one for me. I mean, that and Mulholland Drive, which I saw years apart, but those are kind of the two for me that really crystallized my just fascination, obsession with Lynch. And I saw them after I saw Mulholland Drive was kind of the breakthrough, and then it was years before I saw Twin Peaks. And I watched the series on the Gold Box, came to Fire Walk with Me, rented it, the DVD from Netflix, RIP to that as well. But I was just like bowled over by it, but also kind of like frustrated because the power of the film was such, it almost made me wish it was less to do with Twin Peaks. Cause I'm like, there's such a powerful story here. I almost want to see like lose every trace of Twin Peaks. And now obviously I feel a little differently, but at the time it was like this Laura story it's almost like this was what he wanted to tell the whole time. And he finally got to it. And so I kind of struggled with it. And then the next day I read the reviews from 92 and I was like, what in the world? Like this was people's reaction. It blew my mind. I couldn't believe that was how people responded to it at the time. It just seemed such a different experience watching it there with my headphones on the computer or whatever, being completely like immersed in it. I was shocked.
A couple of my favorite reviews from the time was one up here in Northern California that said that Fire Walk with Me was Lynch's Friday the 13th film. And that made me very excited because I was like,
you must have loved that.
I was like, I can't wait to see this movie.
That's kind of the least of it. It's got more Nightmare on Elm Street and Halloween, I feel like, than it does.
I'm telling you,
Friday the 13th.
The first 30 minutes of Nightmare on Elm Street 4: The Dream Master is the
I remember you saying that.
The mainstream version of Fire Walk with Me. If you see the guy with her in the hallway with the friends, it looks exactly like Twin Peaks. Anyway, but then my favorite review was my local paper that said the first shot of Fire Walk with Me is Lynch's statement about television, right? But the final image of Laura laughing is Lynch's statement to us that he got us to pay for this shit.
Oh yeah, that was probably one of the nicer ones, honestly.
And I was just like, he gets her to look right at the camera to laugh right in her faces. And I was like, listen, I don't agree, but that is an amazing review. I it's funny because before season 3, I loved Fire Walk with Me, but if I started talking about Fire Walk with Me, I would always kind of go into the faults I found with it. Because there was so much like new stuff in there, right? With the owl cave ring and there was a lot of stuff that like I loved the film, but there was just so many things I was just like, why introduce all this stuff if you can't even explore it? Well, now that we have season 3 and Mark Frost books and all that stuff, well, Fire Walk with Me plays so much better now as a bridge between everything. But I also think Joel's going to hate me for saying this, but I do think that the quote unquote fan edit, the big fan edit, the Q2 fan edit of Fire Walk with Me is my favorite version of the film because it's the movie that more or less David Lynch shot. I mean, you know, and obviously he had to scale it down because they couldn't release a 3.5-hour movie, but that is the Twin Peaks movie he was wanting to make. And so when I see it, I feel like that's what I wanted to see at the theater. I wanted to see Laura's story in a Twin Peaks film, and what I got was Laura's story in a very bleak New Line Cinema 2-hour 15-minute cut. But I love the fan edit, and then and now, I mean, now whatever problems I had with Fire Walk with Me, they're gone. Almost all of them are gone. Maybe there's one or two, but off the top of my head, I can't remember, because either talking with people clarified stuff for me, season 3 clarified stuff for me, and so now it's just like it's all one big of a piece. I mean, same thing with like Mark Frost's, you know, books at first. You know, I was just like, what is this? I don't understand this at all. And now that, you know, Twin Peaks is, you know, hasn't been touched in several years, now you can look at it as all of a piece, as opposed to just this new incarnation of Twin Peaks shoved in our faces, and we have to accept it. You have to give it time. Just like I said, season 3, it's like, no matter how much I liked it at the time, I love it now even more, because it's like, you know, now you've had the distance of time, right? And
well,
so,
I'll just say, as you know, I've said it many times, but I'm looking forward to the secret history discussion we had, the special edition George Lucas version that you're going to do, where it's
I'm not going to cut out anything.
No, I know, but I'm looking forward to it coming back up online at some point. Eagerly awaited.
Years later, I read it again, and I publicly apologized to Mark Frost, and he was very kind. He accepted it, and he retweeted me, and he was very sweet about it. But like, I think I was the only person in the fan community that railed against that thing, and I was
so brutal.
I was brutal. It was a takedown, but that was just because. And I maintain to this day that, like, if the Secret History had come out after season 3, I think it would have gone down much better for me. But because it had been 25 years since Fire Walk with Me, and then I was plopped with 75 pages of Lewis and Clark, I was like, "What is this? Where are we going with this?"
I'd almost love to see you do one where you do that, you put it up as it was, but then at the end you come in and almost like annotate it, like update. Here's what I think now, you know?
Yeah, I should probably do. That's
the
why
two views.
Record a new introduction saying this was me at the time.
It's interesting too, because I actually was not aware there was a fan edit of Fire Walk with Me. I think that's really interesting. But
there's a few different ones, but the one I like is the Q2. It includes everything but the Cooper talking to Diane scene, which doesn't make any sense in the context of the film.
Yeah, because I don't know if the rest of you guys know, but there is also a great fan edit of Dune. It's called the Spice Diver cut, and it was available on YouTube for a while. Now it's been taken down by the powers that be. Coincidentally, around the same time, they started re-releasing it in theaters. But yeah, like the Spice Diver cut it's the same thing. Like, the guy took, you know, a lot of the stuff that was in the television cut, and then he put it in the correct order, and you know, it's not as sloppy as the TV cut. He actually added new effects, and you know, and really just made it into a much more coherent version that's certainly closer to what I think David wanted. Yeah, it's I don't know if it's available on YouTube anymore, but it's out there somewhere. You know, you can torrent it or whatever. That one is really worth it if you want to get the full, you know, David Lynchness of, or as much of the David Lynchness as we're ever going to get at this point, unless somebody does like a posthumous, like Touch of Evil kind of thing where they like try to figure out what he wanted.
I do have a request, since Criterion is going to ultimately release like everything that Lynch puts out.
I hope so.
Well, that's their plan. I do hope that when they get around to putting Wild at Heart on 4K, that they finally just release the version they played at Con with the full Bobby Peru headshot. I'm tired of the smoke. I like it because that's how I grew up with it. But can we just see the version that won the Palme d'Or? Just give it to us.
You've been on that
Wild at Heart
forever.
Wild at Heart is a hard one to see. I tried to show it to my girlfriend recently, and it was like
It's not.
I
on
don't think it
streaming.
was on any streaming, like
Nope.
even to rent. And luckily, my cousin had a copy, but it was like, what? How? I even had trouble finding like a DVD to like buy, like a cheap DVD to buy of it or something. It was just like, what? How did this happen? Strange.
And it's funny how at the time, Wild at Heart was considered like his most popular film,
Yeah.
right? And now it's the hardest one to find.
Yeah. I have a question for everybody. What is the Lynch film you feel like you've changed the most on, or see, even if it's not like to dislike, like maybe you see the most differently now from when you first saw it? Because I feel like in a weird way for me, it might almost be Blue Velvet, because I saw that after Mulholland Drive and it was like a classic thing. Same thing happened when I saw Rear Window after Vertigo. I wanted the later movie, and I was like, oh, it's not as much of like a mindfuck mystery where you're blah blah blah. And then over time, of course, I appreciate it more and more. But
Well, after Mulholland Drive, Blue Velvet plays like a stage play.
right, yeah, it was the wrong order to see it in, probably.
I remember
starters.
I remember I showed Blue Velvet to some family once. That's how nuts I was back in 1990. But when Jeffrey and Sandy are driving and they think it's Frank chasing them, but it's her boyfriend Mike. But there's that David Lynch puts in that little car chase in there with the rim flying off the car in like one shot. I remember a family member turning to me and goes, "This is really exciting, Cameron. This is good." Like probably the last time that David Lynch was ever told that this is very exciting. For me, it's Fire Walk with Me, just because I feel like again, I liked it at the time, loved lots of aspects of it. Always felt in some places it was a missed opportunity. But then over time, again, talking with people, seeing the missing pieces, sitting with the film with season 3 now, reflecting on it, all the rough edges for me have been smoothed over. Whereas all the other films have grown in like stature, like just, Straight Story is incredible, is aged incredibly well. But to shift one, to go from I liked it to now I love it,
For me, I think it was Eraserhead. But not quite hated it to loved it. It's more like basically, let me put it this way: when you watch Eraserhead as like a 20-something film student, you're like, oh, it's so weird and cool, and oh, it's so much bizarre stuff. Oh, I want to emulate this. I want to do weird, freaky stuff like Eraserhead. And then I watched it as a reluctant father of 2 children. And I was like, this is
plays like a documentary.
This is a documentary.
Yeah, it pretty much is.
Yeah.
How about the fact that Mel Brooks is still out there tweeting, R.I.P. to David Lynch? Is like, that's crazy. He's got to be like, what, 98 now, something like that? I mean, he was a good 20 years older than Lynch when he kind of gave him that break with Elephant Man,
Well,
and he loved, what was his quote about Eraserhead? Something like,
he said it was it's a movie about parental anxiety.
Yeah.
He got it immediately.
You're a madman. I love you. You're in, is what he said. Here's a question for you guys.
Well, wait, can I get everyone out who hasn't? Anybody else want to throw that out there?
Highway for me.
I agree with Eraserhead. Eraserhead, with you, when you become a parent, it becomes a different movie for you, for sure.
Yeah, Lost Highway for me. The first time I saw that movie, I liked it fine. I didn't love it. I thought it was a little too chaotic. I didn't totally get it. But as the years have gone on, like, it's probably become close to my favorite of all the films he did. And a stellar soundtrack. I mean, it brought me onto Rammstein. So Lost Highway. Now I watch Lost Highway probably several times a year. It's probably my most watched from Blue Velvet and Fire Walk with Me. Now I think Lost Highway took the cake.
I would say Mulholland Drive. Actually, it's like watching something in your 20s to watching something in your 40s, right? Like your whole worldview changes of so many different things. And when Mulholland Drive came out, it actually, well, it terrified me for one thing. It was scary, and there was just too much happening. And now, as you know, again, 20 years later, and having more time with Lynch during those 20 years as well, you know, going from teens to late 40s, it's, you just learn to appreciate the things that he does, and you can recognize more of what he's trying to say, and things that maybe you didn't catch on to before. It's like, oh yeah, no, that's just typical Lynch, that's just what he does. And so you just learn to love it a little bit differently. So yeah, that's what I would say.
Also, he's dealing with
Yeah,
adults.
yeah. I think Mulholland Drive. It's funny you brought that up because I know I sound like a broken record, and I know not everything in Lynch's filmography is related to Dune, but I actually talked to Justin Theroux earlier this year for an interview, and he kind of confirmed this, that basically the scene where they're like, you know, they give him the photograph and they're like, this is the girl. That is like, that's a scene about kind of the compromise he had to go through during the making of Dune. And in fact, the character that Angelo is playing, the sort of mob guy, the Italian mob guy who loves cappuccinos.
Is that Dino?
Yeah.
Yeah. He
That was
looks he looks like Dino, and his name, the character's name is Luigi, and Dino De Laurentiis' brother is named Luigi.
Got it.
So
So bad. Oh my goodness.
Well,
Yeah.
I was going to say to Mandy's comment about Mulholland Drive is like, you know, that's when he's dealing with adults. And I think the reason why Blue Velvet and Twin Peaks especially hits people in the right age when they see it in their early teens, because so much of Blue Velvet and Twin Peaks is about the younger kids. I mean, Sandy's in high school, you know, the big chunk of even Agent Cooper, even though he's older, he still looks age, you know, comparison to the younger kids. Here's my question. I do have to unfortunately wrap this up in about 20 minutes, but here's a question for you guys, because we know Lynch is, or was a, it's going to be hard to say that, but an uncompromising artist who was going to, you know, do things no matter what. If he had never met Mel Brooks, if he had never gotten The Elephant Man, and which led to Dune and all that stuff, would he have done, like, I mean, he was planning on doing Ronnie Rocket right after Eraserhead. So what on earth would he have done? I mean, like, would he have been like John Waters and just done like a series of like really small underground films and then hope for something later? Or, I mean, you know, would we have gotten, you know, David Lynch's Multiple Maniacs and Female Trouble and all that stuff, you know, would we have gotten a collection of small Eraserhead type of films? Or do you think that, you know, it would have killed him and he would have just done paintings for, you know, 10 years and then maybe try again in the 80s and try to do Blue Velvet or something? And like where do you think his career would have gone if he had not been given that green light by Mel Brooks to do The Elephant Man?
Well, I can chime in on this a little bit because it's something that I thought about a lot while I was doing my book, which is it's quite possible he could have just been the Eraserhead guy, in which case I think he, you know, his career maybe would have sort of mirrored somebody like Alejandro Jodorowsky. Like maybe he would have been able to scrape together, you know, weird funding sources and get, you know, just make these weird avant-garde movies. And then, yeah, and he would have just been in that lane, and maybe, you know, he wouldn't have been able to make a living, and eventually he would, you know, whatever, go into, you know, something else or just become a fine artist. But yeah, I think the decision to put him on Elephant Man changed his career completely because it was so different from Eraserhead that, like, you know, executives started look at him as if he could do anything. Which in retrospect we know is not true. But I think in their eyes, it's like, oh, he did this weird ass fucking movie, and then he did this completely like mainstream biopic, which is a little weird, but like acceptable weird for Hollywood.
But the black and white photography, the black and white photography though does carry over from Eraserhead, so there is like this connection there. And in fact, there's this one famous essay that kind of gets down on Lynch later in his career, but talks about Eraserhead, Elephant Man, and Dune as being the growth of a major film artist. That there are themes that carry through those initial 3 films all the way through, which I find really, really fascinating.
Oh yeah, I mean, you could draw direct parallels from the baby in Eraserhead to the Guild Navigator and Dune
to the sister.
Yeah, and the
I mean, I've never
certainly the industrial thing that he really captured, in terms of the Victorian industrial era that he captured. He ported that over to the Harkonnens in Dune, and would have also eventually employed that into Rodney Rocket. I think he said he couldn't shoot Ronnie Rocket in a modern era because there's too much graffiti, and it kind of ruined these landscapes in his mind.
That's where CGI comes in.
I think David could have done. I mean, he did do a bit with CGI in The Return, but I think he could have had a ball with CGI, in his younger, more fantasist era. But don't forget, like, his favorite movie is The Wizard of Oz, and I think that he was capable of that. He was, he had those ambitions, and they were just sort of, cut off at the knee, which is that's what I have to write my article about. So I kind of have to go. But
all right. Well, thank you for stopping by.
Yeah, no, but no, and it's very nice meeting all of you. And again, it's I'm glad we got to congregate a little bit and celebrate, a really, a great artist and great guy.
All right, Max, thank you so much. And make sure everybody, if you are interested in Dune takes here, A Masterpiece in Disarray, this book is a monster.
Ooh. I just literally maybe 4 days ago, last weekend, saw that in a bookstore and was like, that looks interesting. So that's nice to meet you now.
Yeah, sure.
Now that it's already on my radar.
All right, thank you so much.
If any of you want to contact me, I'm on Bluesky. Yeah, or Insta for a while anyway. We'll see how fascist that gets.
Exactly. All right, Max. Have a wonderful night.
You too. Take care.
Take care.
Yeah, I was going to say, based on that, what we were just talking, for somebody who was so much like his own creative persona and dictated. I think Coppola said, like, this is the one guy, they were all on stage together, so this is the one guy on stage who's always done things his own way or whatever. And that's true. At the same time, Lynch was such a reactive artist. Like, at least half of his films are like impossible if something hadn't happened right before. Mulholland Drive, if it hadn't gotten canceled as a TV pilot, and Blue Velvet, if Dune hadn't gone off the rails, and Elephant Man, if, like you said, Mel Brooks hadn't given him this. It's like each one is like a door that opens and leads you in this strange direction that you'd never think you could go in, but it's only possible. Firewalk with me with Twin Peaks, it's like over and over it happens that way.
Yeah, and even in his shooting style, like, I love the idea of an artist just like in the dirt, getting their hands dirty and trying to figure it all out. Like, my friend Josh Eisenstadt, he told me this amazing story. We probably have said this already before on another podcast, but they were going to shoot the scene in Lost Highway when when Pete's girlfriend, played by Natasha Gregson Wagner, comes out of her house and gets into his car and they drive away. It's one exterior. They never use this exterior again, but they want to get this scene of her coming out of the house and get in the car. So they take David. This is the night of filming. They take David Lynch to the neighborhood. He's never seen the house. They showed him pictures, I guess, but they get up to the house. The light's wrong. It's terrible. He's like, I can't have her come out of this house. So everybody gets in a car and David Lynch drives down the neighborhood, finds this house on another street or further down the block, gets out, brings Natasha, goes up to the door, knocks, and says, "Hi, everybody. This is Natalie Wood's daughter. Can I have a scene where she comes out of your door and gets in the car?" Great. And they shot it at some random person's house. And I'm like, that, I mean, I know that's probably poo-pooed in Hollywood, but to me, like, that's what a filmmaker does. Figures
So
it out.
cool.
And just like, I mean, this is David Lynch. He's already won the Palme d'Or and he's knocking on people's doors.
Mm-hmm.
You know, can I just have her come out of your door for like one shot? Thanks. You know, and
Well,
it's
and
unbelievable.
that's how committed he was to every single vision that he had. If that one light bulb did not flicker the way he wanted, he's going to go find a different light bulb, even if it's down, you know.
Or he'll make the flicker part of the scene. Like, for instance, when they're doing the not autopsy, but they're looking at Laura's fingernail in the pilot, that light wasn't working, but they just ran with it. And then when Kyle asked the guy, "Can you step outside?" and the guy said, "Jim," that was a mistake. He wasn't supposed to say that. I mean, the actor says his real name in that scene because he thought Kyle asked him what his name was. And then Kyle, without skipping a beat, goes, "Can you step outside, please?" So, and it's perfect. It's
Amazing.
perfect.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and they talk about the happy accidents, but you can't get those happy accidents if the actors aren't gonna just roll with it.
And I really think that, like, I mean, just the determination that he had, plus his brilliant ideas, and how really Hollywood has always kept him at arm's length. They've always kept him in this box, just a little bit too far away from them, like he's going to spoil something. He would have made his way regardless, I think. I think the collection that we have still would have been pretty much exactly the same, because that's the kind of person that he was, that he has these visions. I'm going to make this film. I don't care who buys it, who gives me money. I'm just going to make a way to do it because this is what I need out of my head. And, you know, it's
if David Lynch was born, if David Lynch was born like, you know, 15 years ago, today he would just be making movies on YouTube. You know, I mean, if you think about the davidlynch.com days and how he was just like, you know, filming somebody sawing a log and then he'd put it up on his website, or, I mean, the whole rabbits thing.
I was gonna say Inland Empire period, like that.
Yeah.
That would have been on YouTube.
Well, not just Inland Empire, but the whole rabbits thing, like, that was filmed in his backyard. You know, and it's just like, yes, it's like, and yes, David Lynch had money. Yes, David Lynch had a beautiful house. Yes, David Lynch, you know, could make things, but he also always acted like a film student.
Yeah.
You know, he would just get in the clay and figure it all out. And the actors trusted him and went through it. You know, I mean, was that in behind the scenes in season 3 where he's like literally putting his hands in Laura Dern's mouth, right? And it's like, I don't know any other filmmaker that could get away with that.
But I mean, even him mixing the stuff in the buckets for the, you know, for the gold, right? I mean, he did that himself, right? Not the story? Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's in the documentary.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe the most amazing thing about David Lynch is the fact that he was married multiple times and nobody has a bad thing to say about this man. Like, nobody has a bad thing to say about this guy, right? And like, you know, and he's, you know, he broke up with Isabella Rossellini, and then he was Mary Sweeney, and she was pregnant, and, you know, it's like, all this crazy tabloid stuff. Nobody has a bad thing to say about this man. They're all just like, we love David. He's so great. Like, they'd all show up for his Festival of the Disruptions. Like, None of my ex-girlfriends would ever show up at the festival reception for me. Okay. And that's fine. I don't want them there. But I love this idea that like everyone was just like, oh, we love David. Like I just like that's how lovable he was. I mean, like he could literally dump you for another woman and everyone's just like, we love him.
Well, and really, like, I mean, the only time I've ever heard that I can remember of a woman saying something really negative about him that it's like, oh my goodness, what happened, is Patricia Arquette when she's doing Lost Highway and she like called him Satan. And like, that's really the only time I've ever heard someone say something like that about him.
But she's turning that story around though.
Well, exactly. Like she didn't mean it. Or she did at the time, but you know, we didn't hear bad things. We just didn't.
No. And I mean, not that I thought that he was guilty of this at all, but when the whole Me Too thing started happening, I was like, oh God, oh, here we go. Cause he was been in the news with the season 3. Oh God, this is going to be terrible. And everyone's just like, oh no, David's lovely. So good for him. I mean, good for him to live. He was an artist through and through. He had a complicated love life. And yet, like, as we can see today, he is praised the world over and everyone loves him. So whatever he did, I mean, having the universe think that highly of you, you know, you did something right.
Yeah.
Adam in the comments says, God forbid Lynch made Patricia Arquette act.
Girl.
She can act. True Romance, Ed Wood, she can act.
Right. Billy Ray Cyrus said the same thing that Patricia Arquette did.
So, yeah, Billy Ray Cyrus blamed him for Miley Cyrus. Right?
Yeah, his was a little different. I think he said David Lynch and the devil were the people who destroyed his family. I guess he had nothing to do with it.
Right. Well, you know, he memorably played the pool fix-it guy, right, before Hannah Montana. So, but anyway, all right, we better wrap this up. Unfortunately, I could do this all night, but I do have my little kid that I need to get ready for bed. Hang on, go out there for one more minute. Thank you. He's already coming in. Guys, it has been fantastic. Thank you for joining me. We could have done this all night, to be honest. Like I said, no, I'll tell you when we're out.
Mr. C.
All right, go out there so I can finish. No, they don't want to see your Minecraft stuffed animals. All right. Okay. All right, come on.
That's a perfect way to end it. Don't worry about that.
This is why I don't do a lot of live streams anymore, folks. There's a lot of coordination that's happened between mom and me and keeping him busy on the Switch so I can do this. But like I said, we could do this all night. We might do another show at some point with other guests, or you guys are invited as well back. But I just needed to do something tonight because this was huge news, not only just in the world of film, but in our own lives. In like I said, David Lynch is the most important filmmaker in my life, and so I wanted to discuss him in some capacity. So thank you everybody for watching. Mandy, we haven't seen you in forever, but I'm so glad you were able to join. It means the world to me. Thank you.
Yeah.
And Joey, I didn't think Joey was going to come here tonight, but his plans fell through, so he's here. So I'm so happy. Thank you. And you might do a show about this as well on your channel, correct?
Yeah, I might give it a couple days, but yeah, I'm going to do something.
All right. And Joe, where can people find you? What's your YouTube channel?
That's a good question. I have to post that. I can't remember what the heck I named. I just recently threw it together, so I'll do something on there.
But if you find Joe Anthony on social media, they can follow you there. And
JA5230 on Twitter. Yep. And Bluesky, I believe. Yep. And I'll probably throw together in a few days after this whole thing gets processed. I'll show everybody a great collection of some of my Lynch stuff and talk about some stories and everything like that. So
you have some good autographs there.
I got a lot of David stuff and Twin Peaks related things. So I'll try to just scoop up all my David Lynch centric things, and we'll show those.
All right. And Joel, where can people find you?
LostInTheMovies.com. You find all my Twin Peaks stuff and other stuff, and it's all highly organized. I spent a lot of time cataloging and organizing it, so I hope people find it easy to navigate now.
Highly
also,
recommend.
You also have a YouTube channel.
Yeah, Lost in the Movies on YouTube as well.
Yeah. All right, everybody. Make sure to subscribe to this channel if you haven't already. I also have a different YouTube channel for all my non-Lynch stuff called Mass Media Consumption. You can find that on YouTube. And if you have watched everything under the sun of David Lynch and you want to watch something else in the Twin Peaks universe, you can check out my fan film Queen of Hearts on YouTube. Queen of Hearts, the Twin Peaks fan film. It's 4 hours long, but hey, it's great. So enjoy it, and we will see you soon. And I'm so happy we were able to kind of start melancholy and kind of sad, and now we're able to kind of finish tonight out kind of smiling and just kind of happy that we were alive to experience David Lynch on this planet. So all right, guys, have a wonderful day. We will talk soon. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you.